Hello, I'm Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. Today I'm making a video combining two of the most frequent requests that I've been getting recently. One, to cover 16 markers with a scenario. So those questions which have AO1, AO2 and AO3 objectives for 16 marks. Plus the other request that's coming in is to cover biopsychology. So I've taken a 16 marker question from biopsychology from one of the past papers that has been based on a scenario. Okay, so today I will not only write a model answer and give you an example of the answer to be written, I will also explain to you step by step how to write the answer, how to approach these type of questions in general, and I'll explain to you a little about biopsychology as well as we go along. Okay, the first thing to do while answering this type of a question is to just let loose in your mind. What I mean by that is all your concerns about how many marks is AO1 worth, how many marks is AO2 worth. Just keep it all aside and read the question very carefully. I can't emphasize enough on this. First thing is, of course, when you look at it and the way it is placed towards the end of the section, you know that it is an essay question. So the moment you see, okay, this is a 16 marker with a scenario, read the question very carefully. Do one complete reading before planning out how to answer the question. So right now I'm reading the question. You can read it along with me. Robert suffered a stroke at the age of 55. After the stroke, he was paralyzed down his right side. Though he could move his left arm and leg easily, Robert could clearly understand what was said to him but was unable to produce any speech. Discuss how knowledge of hemispheric lateralization and language centers in the brain has helped our understanding of cases such as Robert's. Refer to Robert's case in your answer. Okay, now why I have emphasized so much on reading the scenario first is because many students read the answer in a haste, they read the question in a haste, and then they realize that while writing, they have missed out on a lot of points from the question. Then they cancel what they have written, then they rewrite. So when they are making a haste in reading, they feel that they are saving time. Actually, they are wasting time, because if they would have taken that time to read it carefully, they would have saved a lot of time which goes later into cancelling and rewriting things. Okay, so that's the first thing to do. Now, I will explain to you how different objectives in this answer are allotted different marks so that we can plan our answer accordingly. Anytime you have a 16 marker question with a scenario, regardless of which topic it is in, AO1 is worth 6 marks, AO2 is worth 4 marks, AO3 is worth 6 marks. So if you compare it with what I would call the ordinary 16 marker, which does not have a scenario in it, in that you know AO1 is 6 marks, AO3 is 10 marks. So marks have been bifurcated into AO2 and AO3 from AO3. AO1 remains intact, it is as it is. So regardless of the 16 marker has a scenario or it doesn't have it, AO1 is allotted 6 marks. So that is something you can be sure of. Now, when I teach these type of questions in my classes, the first thing that students will ask me is, out of so much that we have learned on the broader topic of say lateralization and language centers, exactly how much to cover in AO1? Because most of us would like to begin from AO1. It makes sense also from a clarity point of view to describe something before discussing it or before applying it somewhere. So then how much to cover in AO1? The answer is very simple. Cover as much as is relevant to the situation given. You have learned a lot about lateralization and language centers. But does everything apply to Robert's scenario here? No. For example, you must have learned about how right hemisphere is a synthesizer and left hemisphere is an analyzer. But does it have anything to do with Robert's scenario? No. So just cover as much in AO1 as relates to Robert's scenario. Think of it as you are covering what is relevant here. Of course, you are going to cover that in AO2 by applying to Robert. But before you can apply that to Robert, you're just explaining in general what those concepts are. You're clarifying those and then you will apply it to Robert. Let's do this step by step. Like how to figure out how much to cover in AO1. I'll just show you step by step. Right now, I have pasted this question onto a Word document. But if you see in the exam paper, most probably some space will be allotted to you for planning. So what I'm doing here, you can do it in the planning section. What you need to do is look at it, the situation once again, line by line. Like the first line, if you see, he has suffered a stroke at the age of 55. This is biological. This is something we don't study about strokes and all. So here there's nothing related to our syllabus to write. Let's look at the next line. He's paralyzed down his right side, though he could move his left and arm and leg easily. This should immediately strike to you as the principle of contralaterality. This is something you have studied about in the syllabus. So just keep on seeing in the situation which are the concepts coming up from your syllabus and keep noting that. Then you will know how to structure AO1. Definitely, it is about contralaterality, which comes within hemispheric specialization or lateralization, and they've mentioned that also. You know that for AO1 scoring well, right now I'm just focusing on AO1. For scoring well in AO1, you have to use good terminology. So not only these concepts should come to your mind, they should come up with proper terminology like contralaterality. Many students will say that the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body and vice versa, but they would not use terms like contralaterality or hemispheric lateralization. Make sure you use those terms and then explain what they are. Robert could clearly understand what was said to him, but he was unable to produce any speech. Now, this is something we have learnt in language. When it comes to understanding what others are saying, and they want us to talk also about language centers, it is Wernicke's area which enables us to understand what others are saying. And it is Broca's area which helps us to produce speech. So in this way, by reading line by line what was given in the situation, I know what to cover for AO1. I now need not be concerned about what is relevant, what is not, because what is relevant, I have made a list of that. So first I need to talk about contralaterality, second Broca's area, third Wernicke's area. When I'm writing, my main concern should be using good terminology and clarifying or explaining it very well. There are other details that you can add, but I would strongly recommend against that. Whatever is irrelevant, as in the example I gave before. In general, what is the right or left hemisphere specialized for? I would suggest not doing that because it's irrelevant. It will waste your time and you will not be credited for concepts which are not related to the scenario. Okay, so I think this should help your AO1 planning. Now the next question which comes is within Broca's area, Wernicke's area, we have learned so much. So what all should we cover within that? This is a little tricky to answer because everyone learns from different resources and the coverage is different in different resources. Still, I would suggest the most logical way of structuring according to me would be when you're talking about, say, the contralateral principle. So let me put it like as if I'm creating a plan on how to write the answer. It might seem what I'm doing right now is very time consuming. That is because I'm explaining to you how to write. When you do it in the paper, it is not time consuming. You'll be able to jot down very quickly. So when I make these videos, if it's taking me a long time to explain something, like say the video is going up to 1 hour or more, does not mean it will take you that much time to write your answer. Also, the length of my answers tend to be a little longer. Again, because I'm explaining to you how to write, not because that is exactly what you have to write. When we are learning, if we learn very less, then in the paper, inevitably, we end up writing even lesser. So that's why I keep my answers elaborate enough so that when you go to write, I know you're going to be condensing somewhere. So your answers should not get affected because at the preparation stage only we have prepared less. Okay, so keeping that in mind, when it comes to AO1, when I'm going to give the principle of contralaterality, what I need to cover within that is its definition, definitely, and how it relates to hemispheric specialization or how it showcases hemispheric specialization. When I have to cover Wernicke and Broca's area, I'll just make a common outline for both because I have to structure the answers in the same way for both. For Broca's and Wernicke's area, in fact, for any brain region that we discuss, let's say, for example, this answer instead was about the somatosensory region or the motor cortex. In that case also, we must always begin with the location or position of the brain area. Where is it located exactly? So first thing we focus on is the structure or where in the brain the area is. Then we come to the function. So what is the work of Wernicke's area? What's the work of Broca's area? And then here, what is relevant to Robert's case? Aphasia. Broca and Wernicke's aphasia. Like, what are the conditions related to impairment of these areas? Because the case is not about a person whose Broca's and Wernicke's areas are functioning normally. It is about a person who's having some difficulty in either of these areas. So we have learned about conditions related to damage of these areas, so we must include that as well. So this is how I would plan my AO1. Like I said, the coverage is different in different books. Perhaps how you have learned where these areas are located, how precisely you have learned about that can also differ. But these are the things that should get logically covered in the answer. Again, it might seem brief what I've written here, but just keep in mind it's for 6 marks and it's like you have to give 6 unique points for 6 marks. You do not have to write anything excessively. It's a myth among students that if you write longer answers, you get more marks. You get marks for the points that you're making. Also, this is going to be repeated twice when I'm writing, in the sense that once I'll be writing this for Broca's area, once for Wernicke's area. So that will give length to the answer when I'm writing. But I would like to insist that length is immaterial. Please do not focus on superficialities like length or word count when you're writing. Be more careful about making points, giving clarity, and using good terminology. Okay, now we've understood how to cover AO1. Now let's look at how to cover AO2. Now there are two approaches to covering AO2. One is to integrate it within AO1. That is, some students like to make a single paragraph that is covering AO1 and AO2. And for example, when they talk about contralaterality in general, like they explain the concept for AO1, immediately they would like to link it to Robert's situation. Then when they speak about Broca's area, again immediately they would like to link it to how it is damaged in the case of Robert. That is one approach. My approach is to take a separate paragraph on AO2. First, I like to explain all the concepts in general. Then I like to connect them with the situation given. So either case, what I'm writing over here, the same thing you could put it like synthesized or integrated into AO1. That's also a perfectly fine approach. It's just a matter of writing style. There's no hard and fast rule how you have to cover it in the paper. So it doesn't matter. You can take either approach. Okay, now how to decide what to write in AO2. I'll tell you when you, like what's the benefit of writing AO2 separately, not from an exam point of view, but for your writing point of view, like not from a scoring point of view, but to make it easier for you. When you write AO2 separately, you've already made your entire outline for AO1, plus you have the question, the stem in front of you. Now you can consider both while planning AO2 because both are in front of you. Many students, although it shouldn't happen if you're writing point by point, but they do tend to miss out on linking some points with the case. To explain this simply, They've not already defined Broca's area properly or Wernicke's area properly, and they're already integrating into the answer, like from point one. I'm not saying everyone does this, many times I've noticed this. So they're already integrating, they don't have clear definitions in front of them. So that's why when they are writing, the way they apply it to the situation, that also tends to be very minimal. Like they just touch upon aspects, they don't really explain how the points are applying to the situation. So to be more thorough in applying the points and to really explain what is happening in the case given, I feel it's better to have both in front of you, the knowledge which is required in totality and the situation. Again, it's a matter of preference. Okay, now in Robert's case, again for AO2, I would recommend the same thing. Like the best approach always is to go line by line, no matter what assessment objective we are covering. So now for AO2, if I look at the first line again, stroke is something we don't need to cover, but paralysis is something that is relevant to the syllabus as we saw earlier. So this is one thing that I would like to connect. In AO1, I'm already giving the definition of contralaterality. While writing, I will just connect with how Robert is showing that his only left hemisphere is damaged because he's paralyzed down the right side. Using wording from this situation, I will be explaining how it applies to Robert. So here I would link the contralaterality principle to Robert. Now link it means not that I will just say in Robert's case contralaterality is seen. That will not give me any marks. How it is seen. What wording we are coming to know from the scenario that is indicating that this problem is taking place. And also from what we have written in AO1, what contralaterality is. How one hemisphere controls the opposite side. How is that being seen in Robert's case? The next thing I would like to apply to his case is that he could understand what was said to him. This relates to Wernicke's area. So that means he isn't suffering from Wernicke's aphasia. Why I feel his Wernicke's area is intact. Those are the things I need to point out. And he's unable to produce any speech. Here I would like to link it to Broca's area. That is showing that he is suffering from Broca's aphasia. AO2 generally tends to be common across students, but there can be slight differences. Again, in terms of content you have learned, for example, if some of you all have learned about the concept of motor aphasia, like given that Broca's area is close to the motor cortex, it's related not only to expressive aphasia but also to motor aphasia. That is something you can connect to AO2 because you have learned about it. If you haven't learned about it, many students have just learned the basics. They have not gone into expressive versus motor aphasia. Then you don't need to cover it. Like again, no hard and fast rule. What is important is you should be able to explain everything that is there in the scenario. In case of Robert, specific content that you are relating with the scenario can differ depending on what you have learned. So now to break it point by point, when we are writing a paragraph separately, like I am doing in this case, just try to match it with the order which you have given in AO1. First of all, AO1 only I have structured according to the order in the scenario. Like why I am talking first about contralaterality because that is what is indicated first. Then why I am talking about Wernicke's area, here I have written like this, but first I will be talking about Wernicke's area when I write because that is indicated first. Then I will talk about Broca's area. Just follow the same sequence while writing for AO2. It's again not compulsory, but it just makes for coherent and clear writing, which is a requirement in the mark scheme. If in AO1 I'm covering, say, arbitrarily first Wernicke's area, then contralaterality, then Broca's, then AO2 again I'm shuffling the concepts. First I'm talking about Broca's, then it's just not very smooth to read. Like if the sequence is common and it's followed logically, it just becomes easier to read for the examiner. Okay, so AO2, at the time of making the outline, I don't really have much to give. So very briefly, if I have to only make, personally, I wouldn't have made an outline if I had to make it in the paper because it's not very necessary, it just follows logically from AO1. But if I had to make, I would make it this way. In Robert's case, where contralaterality is being seen, in the case of right side paralysis, Wernicke's area being intact where it is seen, in his ability to understand what others are saying. and Broca's area problem where it's being seen, where he's unable to produce any speech. Means right now, just to guide myself while writing the answer, remember your plans are not for the examiner, they are for yourself. So just to be able to guide myself while writing, I've just made a note of, okay, these are the points that I'm going to give. Okay, now coming to AO3, it's worth 6 marks like we saw initially. I'll just show that to you again. AO3 is worth 6 marks. For 10 marks, we give up to 4 points, 3 or 4 detailed points. For 6 marks, I would strongly recommend only 2 points in details. Brain biopsychology is one area where, I'm not saying you have to do that, but it is best to give supportive studies. Because biopsychology is such a thing that, yes, you can definitely apply issues and debates like determinism, very relevant because we're talking about biological issues. But somehow the best evidence or the best support points tend to be those from research studies. Again, if you are the student who can very well connect and elaborate debates, issues to the situation, nothing is stopping you from doing that. But generally, what we see in students, they are much better at linking research evidence to the scenarios. That is something they explain elaborately. When it comes to issues and debates, they're able to identify, okay, to say that language processing is just because of Broca's area can be reductionist, or it is deterministic because we are suggesting the person's ability to speak is beyond their control. But that's it. They are not able to extend the argument any further. So that's why I would suggest you stick to your research evidence points. Just give them elaborately for 2 points, and that will justify 6 marks very easily. You don't need to give more points than that. As we write along, I'll give you further suggestions how you could write in other ways. But right now, the 2 points I'm taking for discussion are going to be those which I feel are most relevant and which students will write best. I would like to give those. When it comes to the AO3 part for this, also one thing is to maintain balance. It's always desirable to give one supportive point and one contradictory point, one counterpoint. Up to you though, again, you want to give 2 strengths or 2 weaknesses, that is fine. I would suggest, and what I would take is 1 strength and 1 weakness. So to give a strength, I think most of you will agree that the case study of TAN is the best evidence that we can give here for Broca's area. I will tell you about other possibilities also. First, let me just make an outline of what I would like to give in TAN's case. We have the case study of Le Bonnet or TAN that I would like to give. Now, if I just say that Broca did a case study of TAN and he did a post-mortem analysis, and that helped him to see that, there is issue in Broca's area, that's how he identified Broca's area. Well and good, but that's not elaborate enough to really justify only 1 strength for 6 marks. So if I want to give 1 strength in details, to this I will also have to add that this was not the only case which supported this. There were many such further cases. This was the first case, the pioneering one, but Broca himself did many further case studies. Other researchers did many case studies as well, and they repeatedly got the same findings. Again, depending on where you're learning from, you would know the names of different studies or different researchers who've done the studies. You can organize this accordingly. For example, after Broca did his classic study, there have also been studies by researchers like Dronkers et al. So I would like to give a point from them. When we give case studies or relevant research, yes, it is not very important to remember the name of every researcher. So if you remember, like I've given the example of Dronkers et al., if you remember their names, that is good. Else, if you can just point out what they have investigated by just referring to them as some researchers, that is also fine. You don't have to compulsorily remember all the names, but if you do, that's good. It's an added benefit. Also, like I said, this is too limited if I just say that one case study, and it's not very effective also, because we know one case study is not good enough to uh, show that indeed the whole Broca's hypothesis is correct. So I'm adding case studies, also recent evidence from advanced brain technology like fMRI or PET is also going to suggest the same thing, especially Peterson et al. This is not recent, I will say that. Peterson et al. I'll take as a classic study which supported Broca's area using neuroimaging. But for the recent study, in fact, I would like to take Pascual, Leone et al. They did an RTMS. So they've used an even more advanced technique. I know, again, not very recent, because in the sense even their study, I'll just give you the year, has been done in 1991, but still relatively recent compared to Peterson study, and definitely much more recent compared to Broca's classic research. So they've actually used advanced technology of RTMS, which helps to do manipulation in the brain, and they've shown how we can actually block Broca's area experimentally, and that results in speech related issues. If you're finding all of this is very jarring and you won't be able to remember so many studies, or you won't be able to integrate them well, you absolutely do not have to take these studies. My only concern is, if you're taking the case of TAN, don't give it too simplistically, because then it would look more like a weakness than a strength. Like if you say Broca found it with one case, that it is damage to Broca's area which causes aphasia in speaking. That's not convincing enough. In fact, that is something then I would suggest you take it for a weakness, because just one case showing that also through weak methodology like post-mortem analysis, not very convincing, as I said. Okay, so just make sure your points are effective. They are strong, especially if you want to give only 2 points. So you're focusing on depth rather than breadth. Other possibilities in favor of localization or hemispheric lateralization, you can also cover Wernicke's case studies in the same way that we can cover Broca's case studies. And if you do not want to give research evidence at all and you want to take some other point, a strength would be application to everyday life. Like that is somewhere where, without referring to any research evidence, you can show how this type of research helps in specialized intervention. If we know that it is the Broca's area to which damage results in issues in speaking, we can develop such therapies, neurological therapies, or I just forgot what we call that, those assessment techniques. I think it's called neuropsychological assessment. Those techniques can be made to get people to practice and strengthen their Broca's area, or directly using brain techniques to stimulate the Broca's area, or to develop medicines which could help better cell activity in the Broca's area to treat patients who are having these issues. The point which you have to make very effectively here is that as long as we say too many areas are contributing to language, that's not very helpful in developing intervention. So if I have a case in front of me who's having language issues, what treatment should I give? How can I target all the areas of the brain simultaneously? But when researchers pinpoint, okay, this is the area which causes damage, in that case, we are able to develop very targeted treatments. So that would be one easy strength you could take without referring to any studies. But as I mentioned before, students don't do very well when it comes to elaborating on these issues without studies. So consider if you'll be able to write effectively and then only take up something like this. This also reminds me of Peel evaluation, point, explanation, example, and link. I've covered that many times before. Today I'm not taking that. Today I will just show you how to write points elaborately, but you will be able to see inherently I'm using a Peel structure only. If you want to see how to use the Peel format, you can see any of my approaches related videos which I have put above. Following the Peel format helps you to give very detailed and well explained points. So that's always good. For a limitation of lateralization and localization of language type of a topic, I would say that recent evidence has contradicted the idea that language centers are confined only to Broca's or Wernicke's area. So there has been this study by, it's then one of the very famous textbooks, Dick and Tremblay. And it was actually recent, like not just relative to Broca. Actually, it has been done in 2016. These researchers, like using very sophisticated technology, fMRI, they have shown that not only the Broca's area or Wernicke's area implicated in language, but also other subcortical areas. Now, if we are giving this study as an argument to make it effective, remembering the researcher's name, as I said, is not that important, it is desirable. But you will only have to remember which other areas are implicated in language. If you just say even other areas are implicated in language besides Broca and Wernicke's area, that's not an effective argument because you're not able to point out to which are those areas. So then if you want to give this study, just make sure you remember it is subcortical areas such as the thalamus, which are contributing to language as well. And that is something that should be so easy to remember. Like it shouldn't take much effort because you've learned already that thalamus is the relay center of the brain. That is the center which assures that correct information is going forward to the correct brain regions for processing or analysis. Then of course it has to be the thalamus that is implicated in language as well, because thalamus will assure that what has to be understood is going to Wernicke's area and what has to be produced is going to Broca's area. So just make sure you remember the brain area so that you can put this point effectively. Other possibilities and weaknesses are, it's not only recent research which has contradicted Broca's findings. Right from the beginning, Lashley has been contradicting Broca's findings. So you can talk about his theory of equipotentiality, or what we in general call the parallel distributed processing models, which suggests that for any function, especially in language, they have argued, there are too many brain areas which are implicated. Like to pinpoint and say only one area is contributing or it's contributing too much might not be accurate, because when people are speaking, there are just too many areas which are playing different roles. Speaking is a complex behavior. Same way, understanding of language is also complex. So we cannot really reduce it to only the Broca or Wernicke's area. There are so many components to understanding language. A person's mannerisms, emotional tone, besides the words that they are speaking. So of course, besides Wernicke's area, which can comprehend words mainly, there will also be other areas such as those in the right hemisphere, which identify vocal tone and extra language basically, that will also be activated. So that is something that is being ignored by Broca and Wernicke's research. Also, if you want to give specifically Lashley's example within this his theory of equipotentiality, then you have the classic rat and maze study. No matter which area of the brain he damaged, the rats were not able to complete the maze. So he was not able to locate this one particular area which is responsible for spatial learning. So that contradicts localization. Besides these things, you could argue as a weakness that it is reductionist, which will overlap with parallel distributing models. Another issue that you could apply here for a weakness is determinism. So here you could cite examples of cases, like what's coming to my mind is the case of EB. So if you've learned the case of EB, how he overcame language related issues despite losing almost all of his left hemisphere. So he hardly had anything. It was like he was only a half brain person. But he did manage to develop his language skills later in life, much after the incident which took place with him, only on the basis of a right hemisphere. And whereas the assumption is that right hemisphere does not contribute to language at all. So EB's case is a very strong point against both lateralization and language centers in the brain. So there you can indicate how these theories are deterministic, to assume that only one brain area can control all of language and individuals don't have the free will to try to overcome any language related issues that they're having. They can make choices to practice hard like EB did and compensate for any losses that they're having in their brain. Also, what comes to my mind is you could take up nomothetic versus idiographic approaches. Be it Broca's research, Wernicke's research, or some of even the equipotentiality researches which have been done, not Lashley's studies, other studies which have been done. In that case, they've been all idiographic, and it is difficult to generalize from such cases because most of the times patients are already suffering from some damage at the time that these studies are done. You could also give criticisms of post-mortem analysis to particularly take up methodology. Post-mortem, we know the brain can be affected for many other reasons at the time of death, and we don't know when the person was living whether that brain area was damaged or not. Although I would call this a weak point if we criticize post-mortem analysis, because like I said, many other even advanced studies have complemented Broca's findings. So when you're writing it, just be careful that to use that point to criticize only the original research which was done with TAN, not overall to criticize all the research which has been done related to Broca's area. That is one tendency students have. They would say things like all the studies have used idiographic approach. That's not true. All the studies in Broca's area haven't done that. So if even for the advanced like MRI, PET studies, if we give that point that they have been idiographic, that will not hold true. So make sure you say only for the original case study which actually discovered using post-mortem analysis was very weak methodology. So make sure to specify that way, then it holds good, your point. If you're taking something like Lashley's research and you make it very specific to the rat study, in that case, make sure to talk about extrapolation if you want to like criticize the methodologies being used. Because when it comes to animal studies like this, extrapolating to humans is very difficult. We know the human brain is far more complex. I'm not able to elaborate too much on these points right now because I just want to cover possibilities quickly. But I'm sure from what I've said earlier, you're getting how to structure them. So you can talk about extrapolation. Also the fact that Lashley studies have been done on spatial learning rather than language particularly, because he's done it with rats firstly who do not possess language, and he was looking at a different skill altogether. So while it might be possible that spatial learning is not localized, but still Broca's and Wernicke's area could still be localized for language. Like the area which he studied is different. So his research can be a criticism that all of localization is not true, but in specific language centers are not localized. It doesn't really support that point. Okay, so these are a lot of points which you can give for AO3 depending on what you've learned. Now I will write down the sample answer just to show you how you can organize it. What I would like you to do is, as you're watching this video and as I'm writing my answer, first please write your own answer. Like first please write, for example, your AO1 paragraph, pause the video in the meanwhile, then restart the video and just see whether your points are matching with mine or not. Then do the same thing for your AO2 and AO3 paragraphs. Like just take an active learning approach, especially if you're doing this type of an essay for the first time. Because when we see things, when you listen to what I'm saying, they make sense, but not necessarily they'll translate to you being able to write the answer. So when you practice, then only you have that ability to write on your own in the exam paper. So make sure you're practicing along, take an active approach. That's what I want you to do. Don't be passive. Don't just listen to what I'm saying. So this is the outline for you. Try to work on this outline only, or if you have another outline of your own, you can work on that also and then just later match my style of writing with yours. Also, I will upload the answer that I write finally onto my website and I'll link it in the description box and pin comment below. I hope you'll take it in the right spirit that it's just a sample. It's not something to be memorized and written. Anyways, the same situation is not going to come in the paper. But don't try to memorize anything from my answer, neither AO1 nor AO3. Take it for learning. Take it for reference to be able to correct your own work. Don't take it as an absolute final answer because it is not that. I will be writing the answer in this video. As I write, more frequent mistakes that students make or more ideas on how to meet mark scheme requirements, I'll keep on narrating to you. So let's start writing the answer. Alright, so let's begin with AO1. I would like to start by defining hemispheric lateralization and immediately linking the principle of contralaterality to it. So hemispheric lateralization is the idea that each hemisphere of the brain, with the left and right hemisphere, are specialized for different functions. For some specific functions like vision, hearing and movement, these hemispheres are found to follow the contralateral principle, meaning that the left hemisphere regulates these functions for the right side of the body, and the right hemisphere regulates these functions for the left side of the body. I have nothing much to advise here because this is just basic what we are writing. Now I have something to advise. When we are transitioning to the next thing about language centers, like always try to write your answers in a flow. No matter which board you're from, whenever you're writing an essay answer, try to always keep one point connected to the previous. So there's some logic which shows that, okay, all of this is coherent. Like they say coherent, it's all united. We're not talking about fragments of information. We're writing a total essay on one particular topic, which is flowing smoothly as per that topic. So what we can write is, now how does lateralization relate to language centers? Because after all, it's the left hemisphere which is responsible for language. So the left hemisphere is found to specialize in language, which is evidenced by the presence of major language centers in it. One such center is Wernicke's area. Now, how you define where Wernicke's area is depends on how you've learned it. So this is where your answer can differ from mine. I know all of y'all will know at a minimum that it is in the left temporal lobe, and you should know that. Besides that, whether you know its specific location or not can depend on whether you've learned it. I'm writing it very specifically, but I am telling you right away, it's not compulsory to give these many details. You can leave it as simple as it is in the left temporal lobe. So this area is in the left temporal lobe, in the posterior part, posterior as you know meaning the back part of the superior temporal gyrus. Okay, I hope you've learned Wernicke's area well so that you would be able to label it on a diagram also, if like they give you a diagram of the brain and they ask you to pinpoint where it is, because that's something they do frequently in the papers. So assuming that you've learned it well, for that this shouldn't be a problem, like pointing out where it is located. Of course, if you want to be even more specific, you can also suggest that as per Brodmann's map, this is area 22. But I feel that becomes a bit too detailed and I'll leave that out. As I had presented in the outline, you can refer back to it. After pointing out where the area is located, we can just describe its function. So we can say Wernicke's area is found to regulate. I use the term regulate rather than cause because we know that these are neural correlates of behavior. These are not necessarily determinants, but it's up to you. So it regulates language comprehension, and damage to it results in the condition of Wernicke's aphasia, which causes we have to point both things. We have to point out that there's difficulty in understanding language but not in producing it. take it as a rule whenever you talk about Wernicke and Broca's area, because they complement each other. When you talk about one, mention about the other also. Like, just point out always that just because Wernicke's area is damaged does not mean that Broca's area also is damaged. So always think in those terms. So we can say which causes impairment in understanding language, though speech remains fluent, even if nonsensical. In the sense that when the person is speaking, not being able to comprehend what the other person is saying would mean that they would answer with something that's meaningless, irrelevant to what the other person is saying. But producing speech by itself is not an issue. So fluency will be there. They don't have problem producing words. It's just that their words won't correspond to what the other person is saying. In the same way, I need to structure the part for Broca's area. Like, this is enough for Wernicke's. Another such center is Broca's area, which is found, like we can say it is found in the left frontal lobe, in the posterior part. Now this one is below, Wernicke's is above, this one is below, of the inferior frontal gyrus. If you want to relate it to Brodmann, you can say it's found in areas 44 and 45, but again, that's up to you. This much is enough for the position. Now to describe what is done. Broca's area regulates speech production such that damage to it causes problems in producing speech, while understanding remains intact. Okay, so again, as I mentioned, it's up to you if you want to talk about motor and expressive aphasia separately. Right now, I'm not getting into it, not required. But if you're talking about motor aphasia, you can talk about how Broca's area being close to the motor cortex actually impacts the vocal muscles, which makes it difficult to move them. So it's not just a question of being unable to speak. Actually, it's the muscle movement which gets impaired in the case of Broca's area. And that is, if you're writing that, you will be able to connect it to Robert also, because he has right side paralysis. So this is my paragraph for AO1. I would like to remind you, as I've mentioned before, you will find it lengthy definitely, but that is deliberate on my part. I write extensively so that when you're writing in the paper finally, you have good enough reference material, and when you write, you're bound to shorten it. So then you will be within good length when you're writing the paper. Okay, now let's start relating this to Robert's case, because like I told you, I would like to write a separate application paragraph. Robert's symptoms demonstrate contralaterality. I hope you're able to see also how the Peel format is inherent in what I'm writing, because I'm always making points or signposting the paragraph. Like, this is what is being seen, then I'm explaining. So it's always point, explaining, and linking. So okay, then this is the conclusion. This is what we are coming to know looking at his case. So I hope you're able to see that. Like, here I've made a point. Contralaterality is what I'm going to relate to his case. Now, using wording from his scenario, his right side is paralyzed, though he can move his left and right leg easily. His right side of the body is damaged, indicating that it is the left hemisphere which is impaired, while the right hemisphere remains intact. Evidenced by his being able to move his left arm and left leg easily. I hope you're able to see now when I said that we should not just keep on pointing that, okay, Robert shows contralaterality. You need to explain it. So this is how we explain that contralaterality is being seen using wording from the scenario and explaining in the sense it's the left hemisphere which is damaged because the right side is showing problem and right isn't damaged because the left side is moving freely. Explain it this way. Okay, now also talking about his language centers. Okay, so what we can say is damage to Robert's left hemisphere is further evidenced by his language related problems. Again, you can see I've signposted or following the Peel format, I've given the point. Now I'll explain this further. While his Wernicke's area remains intact, given that he can clearly understand what is said to him, it is his he seems to be suffering from Broca's aphasia, given that he is unable to produce any speech. Right, this much is enough for what we can write for Robert. As I had indicated in the outline, we just need to relate the points with his situation. So all that we gave in AO1, we have related to his situation. The alternative way, wherever in AO1 you have mentioned these things, just use these points only as examples. Okay, now coming to AO3 or the discussion, I would take a separate paragraph. Ideally, we take two paragraphs, like for each AO3 we take a separate. The AO1 and AO2 paragraphs, we don't break them, and if we're integrating them, we put them in a single paragraph. For AO3, we tend to break down the points. Again, it's up to you, it's a matter of preference, but this is generally what is followed because it's the easiest to follow for the examiner. Okay, we can start off with, and also yes, one more thing which students ask me, the AO3 points do we need to relate to the scenario? It's optional, always good, makes for good effective writing if you can relate it in some way, but not compulsory. AO3 points you can take as a standalone, independent of the scenario, more to do with analyzing what we have given in AO1 rather than AO2. Okay, we can say a strength of, again following the Peel format, a strength of the ideas of lateralization and language centers is that they are supported by research from their onset. The pioneering research for language centers was done by Broca. Who demonstrated in his case study of Tan, that is case study of Le Bonnet, that it is indeed Broca's area which is damaged in the case of impaired speech production. Using post-mortem methodology, upon the death of Tan, he showed lesions in the Broca's area as evidence for that being the reason for Tan's ability to be able to articulate only one syllable, Tan. Of course, I know there are many other details about Broca's case study that you must have learned, such as how he did intelligence tests on Tan, or what was the age of Tan at the time of death. He was 51 years. For evaluation, as for everything else, like to be focused, just make sure to include only what is relevant. Don't stray off too much. Right now, what is the point that we are trying to make? That there is research evidence right from the beginning. So let's not provide unnecessary details. Like if I give his age, okay, I'm showing my knowledge, I know what was his age. Or if I give why he developed the condition, yes, that's good. But am I giving the case study for its own sake, or am I trying to make a point about this is based on research, this is not just speculation? So accordingly, I should write my paragraph. Like never lose focus of what you're trying to do whenever you write any answer. Okay, so I have said that it's supported by research from the onset. Then following studies by Broca himself, case studies by Broca himself and other researchers went on to support the idea repeatedly that in patients of Broca's aphasia, it is that particular area which is damaged. I would like to reiterate, I'm giving an example of a specific research. You don't have to. If you remember it, it makes your answer more effective. And instead of this study, you might remember some other. You could give that. Dronkers et al. 2007 showed in their case studies that damage to Broca's area results in difficulty forming sentences, halting speech, impaired syntax, meaning grammar, even though understanding of speech remains intact. I just want you to focus on how I have covered this research. I'm not just said that Dronkers et al. Also found that Broca's area damage results in speech impairment. That would be too general, like what is special about their study. So just naming the researcher without giving specific details, like this is exactly what they found, these are the problems with speech production, doesn't make sense. Also, many times for this reason, students are surprised when I say it's okay, you don't need to write the name of the researchers, because in their mind, that's what they're thinking, that if I don't write the name of the researcher and I just say that, same case studies have been done, doesn't it look silly? Like, doesn't it look like I can fabricate anything and write? You cannot, because these are very specific findings. So if you intend to write very explicit findings like this, you need not name the researcher, because you have so much substance to give in the finding itself that it clearly shows that indeed there has been research like this, though you don't remember the name of the researcher. But the findings are so specific, they are going on to support what Broca had found. So if you know the findings well, which is key, regardless of you know the name of the researchers or not, if you know the findings well, you will be able to make an effective point even without the name of the researcher. Again, I'm adding something optional, whether you want to add it. I know it's becoming long also, even from a detail point of view, but just to give you all possibilities of what things make this point effective. So in fact, even neuropsychological, or rather we can say a technological research done after Broca's case study supports the case study evidence. For example, an advanced study using RTMS technology. You don't need not write, but you can just know RTMS means repeated transcranial magnetic stimulation. by Pascual Leone et al. 1991 showed that temporary disruption to Broca's area in healthy individuals, like trying to indicate they are not patients, results in speech production difficulties. Such experimental evidence adds to Broca's evidence coming from adds credibility or validity from individual case studies. There's two things to address here. Again, here you don't need to know the name of the specific researcher. If you can give a specific explicit detail like this, it indicates you know exactly what the research was about. Also, what is RTMS, just for your understanding? It is using a very powerful magnet to shut off some brain areas temporarily. This is done to see if that area is shut off without causing any harm to a human patient, like not having to do studies with animals, surgical studies. For extrapolation's sake, they do it with actual humans. They temporarily shut off some area of the brain and just see what is the impact. So they're able to get human evidence. They're not having to harm any human in the process. And experimentally doing manipulation, they're able to show, okay, only if this area is shut off because we are targeting specifically this and nothing else, this is the impact which is seen. So it is credible. Another thing that would come to your mind is, can we take this as a separate point altogether? Of course. What I have done is, I'm not expecting you to write all of this part. You might write some of this. So what I've written initially, definitely you need to give that about the case of TAN. After that, you would be writing selectively from what I've written here, if you're using this as a reference. So that's why I have given elaborately, so that you can choose from here. You definitely don't have to write all of this when you're writing. So you can choose, and if you feel any point is really worth a lot of merit, like supposing you feel this RTMS study is very interesting, so you feel it can be a supportive point of its own. Maybe you don't want to give TAN's point at all and you just want to give about this study. You can explore more about it enough to be able to make a full paragraph out of it and write just this. That's also fine. It is a supportive point, it's not a counterpoint. So very easily you can elaborate. Even if it was a counterpoint and it was detailed enough, you could take it as like a separate criticism. Just make sure when you take any particular point and you intended to put in a full paragraph, in that case you can give like elaborate details on it. Make sure you have that much detailing. That's the only concern. Okay, quickly to finish this answer and to give the final AO3 point. However, a weakness of these ideas is that they are not always supported by research. In the sense that even you can take the same point opening with reductionism, that they are found to be reductionist through recent research. So if you intend to take it from a reductionism, holism point of view, you can give the same argument which I am giving here. Some recent studies using advanced technology that can map out the brain more extensively, means what I'm trying to say here is more finer detailed areas of the brain can be explored, because now resolution is very good of technology, have demonstrated that it is in fact the collective functioning of several brain areas that contributes to particular functions, and localization might be a very reductionist idea. For example, Dick and Trimble in 2016 showed that only 2% of modern researchers think that language is completely controlled by Broca's and Wernicke's area. Again, if you want to make points like these effective, just make sure you remember these type of percentages like exact results, that you're able to give something substantial. It should not be very generic. So some recent researchers have argued against this. That's not sufficient. Give concrete points. Technology such as fMRI has been used to generate high resolution images of several brain regions as participants perform language related tasks. It is repeatedly found that alongside Broca's and Wernicke's area, there are centers in the right hemisphere that contribute to understanding and production of speech. Also that subcortical areas such as the thalamus contribute to it, contribute to these functions. Hence the idea that language centers in the brain completely control language abilities in a person may be invalid. Okay, whenever we say something's invalid, just point out what is invalid. Don't make a general statement, something's invalid, that becomes too extremist or absolute. Of course, some part of something can be invalid, not an entire theory. So we are not saying that Broca's area and Wernicke's area by themselves are invalid, or we are not saying that these areas play no role in language whatsoever, like whatever they found is absolutely wrong. No, we are just saying they do contribute, not as much as is thought. That is what is invalid, to assume that these are the only centers contributing. So make sure that is clear when you make a point. Earlier I had mentioned, do you need to link all of this to AO2? You do not have to. I prefer not to. But if you had to, I'll just show you very quickly how you could do that. Some of you would feel that's better writing style because you're really like integrating it with AO2 as well. So it's even more deeply connected. Like the whole answer gets an even deeper connection. Absolutely. I can understand where that is coming from. So I'll just give you an idea if you want to do that. First, we have said that there is a lot of like credible evidence to support Broca's language problems, at least like Broca's aphasia. In Robert's case, we did see that he does have this Broca's aphasia issue. So if we want to relate it to his scenario, we could say, when we have said that experimental evidence adds validity from individual case study, this suggests that for cases like that of Robert, it is a valid idea to assume that there has been damage to Broca's area. Or instead of a valid idea, if you want to say, you could say it would be accurate to assume that there has been damage to Broca's area which is causing his issues with speech production. Supposing instead of this you would have given a point on generalizability, like because Broca has based his case on only one, Tan-Le-Borgne, then you could conclude of, to relate to Robert's scenario, then that shows that maybe the findings would not generalize to cases like Robert. Just connect the idea to what is seen in Robert, like whatever strength or weakness you've made, what is it helping you to do with Robert's case, like understand it better or casting doubt on the interpretation we are removing of Robert's case. That is what you need to indicate. So for the limitation, if you want to connect it, you could say this suggests that in cases like that of Robert, while Broca's area might contribute to speech difficulties, there might be other areas contributing along with it. Okay, so that's how we can write a 16 marker, which includes a situation, a scenario. Yes, these type of questions do come up frequently in the paper, at least more frequently than you think. So please do not ignore them. In this video, my intention was that you should be able to understand how to answer any of this type of question, not only this particular question. So I hope it helps you in the way that I intended to. If you have any feedback on my video, you have any comments, any questions about this video, you can leave them in the comments box below. When I get the time, I do look at the comments, and if they are relevant, I do answer them also. I also share my personal contact number and email ID in the description box and pinned comment below. Please use those contact details only if you want tuition in AQA psychology or any international board for psychology from me. If you ask me anything about this video on my personal contact number, I will not be answering there. Also, if you have any suggestions for what you would like me to cover next, which topics you want to see on the videos, again, you can leave those suggestions in the comments box below. So that is it for this video, and I hope to see you soon with another video. Keep learning, keep practicing well. It might seem that the exams are far away in May, June. Not really. You know, AQA portion is very extensive. So I hope you've already done quite a lot. If you haven't, buck up and just put in your best effort. It's already too late to begin. Okay, so don't delay any further. Work hard. Definitely get results of your hard work. All the best for your preparation, and I'm ending the video. Goodbye.